Hey TSC fans, Meteorologist Trey Greenwood here, back with another one of our weekly Sunday videos detailing the meteorology behind the week ahead in Texas weather. Over this past week, we saw some severe weather across parts of the state. Last weekend, we saw some of the storms in the Houston area get a little bit rowdy with some tornadic activity. And then last night, we had a little bit of a severe threat to deal with. Not much happened on the severe front, but we did have some flooding issues in the Houston Metroplex, and that looks to be a story that may continue across the week ahead. We'll get to that here in just a second. The good news is that the severe threat is expected to remain very low for the upcoming week. Here is your current SPC, Storm Prediction Center, outlook for today. Just a general thunderstorm risk in the light green area there, so southern and southeast Texas coasts. Experiencing some maybe rumbles of thunder today, but nothing in the severe weather department. Same thing for tomorrow. Parts of East Texas in that general thunderstorm risk. May see some lightning and thunder, but severe weather not expected. And then a perfectly clear map for Tuesday and beyond at this point. That may change in the coming days as we get a little bit more confidence in what's going to happen later on in the week. But for now, the chances for severe weather look to remain very low for the days ahead. For now, though, it is a chilly one out there today. Recording this just after 11 a.m. Central Standard Time, and we have temperatures in the 20s across the Texas Panhandle and West Texas, 30s from the Red River south into Central Texas, with 40s and 50s south of that. So a very chilly air mass has entrenched itself across the state. And the reason is the cold frontal passage that we had yesterday. The cold front was our main initiating mechanism for storms in yesterday's low-end severe threat and flash flooding risk as it surged to the south across Texas. And behind that cold front was some very cold air. Winds behind the cold front are out of the north. You see the wind barbs here across pretty much the entire state out of the north. These individual station plots here, the barbs, that's how you read the wind direction. We go through the little staffs there toward the center of the station to give you our wind direction. So you can see that across most of the state, those wind barbs are out of the north, indicating air that's coming from a much colder place. This is Arctic air that's been able to penetrate down deeply into the southern U.S., and cold air is usually pretty stubborn. It's going to stay in place for the next couple of days, at least through Tuesday for much of the state, before we get a little bit of a warm-up on Wednesday. Until these northerly winds change, which, of course, again, bringing that cold air from the north toward the south, until those flip toward a much more southerly or southeasterly direction to pull that warm, moist air from the Gulf back into Texas, we're going to be a little bit on the cold side. All right, let's dive into some model data so we can see how the pattern is going to progress over the coming days. We'll start with the North American model. This is our short-range model, and we'll start out at 500 millibars. As we talked about in our last Sunday video, 500 millibars is about 18,000 feet, and it's where we look for troughs and ridges. Troughs are these kind of downward kinks in the solid black lines you see there. Ridges are more of your upward kinks. Troughs are associated with low pressure and rising motion that we need for storm development, while ridges are associated with high pressure and sinking motion, which are more favorable for clear skies and not favorable for storm development. So this is this morning's run of the North American model. And as it was initialized, not a ton going on here across the southern portion of the country, especially Texas, mostly just what we call zonal flow, which is flow that's going from west to east. We really don't see any notable troughs or ridges across the state, but look here across the northwestern portion of the country. This trough is going to start digging down through the flow, and it's going to impinge upon the central and southern portions of the U.S. come tomorrow. And that's going to lead to some unsettled weather for areas out ahead of that trough, including parts of Texas. As we go through the day today, that trough continues to dig down into the desert southwest, and then as we go into the morning tomorrow, it makes its way off into parts of West Texas, the central U.S., and this is valid tomorrow at noon, so lunchtime tomorrow. Right out ahead of that is going to be where our strongest forcing or rising motion is going to be located. So portions of Oklahoma, Arkansas, down into Texas. I'm going to back this up a little bit as well. Notice that we have a little bit of a very subtle wave. We call these short wave troughs, very subtle kinks in the overall flow that can lead to more focused areas of forcing for rising motion out ahead of them. And you see to the south of this main trough, we have a little bit of a short wave moving across Mexico into Texas through the morning and afternoon tomorrow. This is at 6 a.m. tomorrow, and now at 9 a.m. tomorrow, strong west-southwesterly flow aloft over East Texas into the Gulf Coast states. And that is going to allow for a little bit of an extra mechanism to allow for rising motion across the Gulf Coast. So we really have multiple mechanisms to allow for some unsettled weather tomorrow, and that is going to lead to a risk for some thunderstorms as well as some flash flooding across parts of southeast Texas. This is the Weather Prediction Center's excessive rainfall and flash flooding risk, valid from 6 a.m. tomorrow, so 6 a.m. Monday morning through 6 a.m. Tuesday morning. This is a level 1 out of 4 marginal risk here. Unlike the Storm Prediction Center that uses 5 categories for severe weather, the Weather Prediction Center only uses 4 categories for excessive rainfall and flash flooding: marginal, slight, moderate, and high. And the green here, the green shading here, is the marginal level 1 out of 4 area. And that encompasses portions of southeast Texas, including the entire Houston Metroplex, really the southern half of the Houston Metroplex, I'll add here. But again, don't pay too much attention to where these lines exactly are. If you're just a little bit outside this, you could see some flash flooding as well. So really the entire Houston Metroplex should be on alert for some flash flooding concerns tomorrow. Houston over toward Beaumont, down toward the Louisiana border. That is going to be our most favored area for some isolated flash flooding. Now, it is only a level 1 out of 4, so widespread flash flooding and severe flash flooding is not expected tomorrow, but especially in our urban areas like the Houston-Galveston Metroplex, we're going to possibly see some exacerbation of flooding concerns with heavy rainfall that's expected to come tomorrow. So we continue through the day. Tomorrow, that trough continues to dig down to the southeast. We're going to get a continued kind of glancing blow across East Texas from that to allow for multiple bands of thunderstorms to continue through the afternoon and early evening on Monday. Off to the north, perhaps some rainfall as well up into the Arklatex. Will be well north of any type of instability that would be favored for any type of severe weather with this. So no need to worry about severe weather with this trough, even though troughs do tend to initiate severe weather. Not going to be the case in this one because we just don't have an unstable atmosphere to support robust thunderstorms, especially this far north. But places across Oklahoma, Arkansas, the Arklatex area could see some rainfall, perhaps with the colder air farther north as well. Maybe some snow flurries mixing into portions of Oklahoma, Arkansas tomorrow as well. Not expected to see any winter weather down here in Texas. We're going to be just warm enough to kind of prohibit any type of winter precipitation from reaching the ground, but certainly could see some heavy rainfall with these areas, within these areas tomorrow. I'm going to zoom in here to the Southern Plains sector, show you kind of how the surface pattern is expected to take place. So once again, we had that cold front move through yesterday. That cold front is currently situated right along the Gulf Coast right now. It may be just off the southeast Texas coast. You can tell because we have a little bit of a wind shift in this area. Winds to the north of this boundary, out of the north, going from north to south, and then out to the south of this boundary across the Gulf, we see winds out of the south. So we have a very well-defined wind shift in this corridor, and that's a telltale sign of a frontal boundary. And of course, to the north, we have very cold air. All those blues and greens are your 20s and 30s temperatures. This is valid this morning as the model was initialized. But very cold air to the north of this boundary, much warmer air in the 70s to the south. So we have a very strong temperature gradient and a very well-defined wind shift. Very classic signs of a frontal boundary, specifically a cold front situated across this corridor. And this cold front's not going to do a ton of movement over the next day or so. It's going to just kind of hang out in the northern Gulf. And what's going to happen as that kind of shortwave trough that we talked about, and then that positively tilted trough out across the desert southwest starts to dig into the central and southern U.S., we're going to start to see low pressure development across the Gulf. When you have these troughs start to overspread these temperature boundaries, these temperature gradients here, we won't go too deep into the science, but that is a classic way to induce surface low development along the boundary. And that's exactly what's going to happen tomorrow. You see just at the bottom of the screen there a little bit of that counterclockwise rotation of the wind barbs, indicative of a weak surface low developing in the western Gulf. And that surface low is going to traverse along this frontal boundary off to the east and really provide quite a bit of ammunition for some flash flooding and heavy rain concerns, particularly out to the east, Louisiana, Mississippi, down into Alabama, over toward Georgia. That marginal risk for flash flooding does extend all the way out to the east into Alabama and Georgia, as well as the Florida Panhandle. But back here to the west, we're still going to have enough support, especially as the surface low gets going tonight into tomorrow morning, for some heavy rainfall focused along to the north of that surface low and frontal boundary, and that's going to lead to multiple rounds of storms impacting parts of southeast Texas, which is going to lead to that isolated flash flooding risk. Now you can see, as we go to our dew point map here, showing where our moisture is located, you see those dark blues and purples. Those are our 60s and 70s dew points that's going to be most favorable for severe weather. We need that really rich moisture in the low levels to support severe weather. And you can see that the cold front has pushed all that moisture out well into the Gulf. This is tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. All of the juice that we would need for severe weather is out into the Gulf. You see very dry air inland across Texas, dew points in the 30s and low 40s across Texas, and that's just not enough to support severe weather. The atmosphere is not going to be unstable enough to support severe weather. We might see a little bit of elevated instability atop the kind of colder air mass at the surface to warrant maybe a few lightning strikes here across southeast Texas, especially closer to where the better moisture is tomorrow. But again, severe weather not expected with this setup, but we do have enough moisture through the column and along that frontal zone to warrant a threat for some isolated flash flooding. Here's some of our current high-resolution model guidance showing where the precipitation might occur going from today into tomorrow. And you can see, as we go through the day, fairly quiet across Texas today, but early tomorrow morning, this is going to be at 4 a.m. tomorrow morning, you can start to see some of those bands of thunderstorms developing across the western Gulf and into South Texas, and those are going to proliferate as we go into the morning and afternoon tomorrow. You see a lot of that rainfall just kind of training over the same areas of the southeast and eastern Texas coasts there, including the Houston metropolitan area. And then that's going to last through the afternoon before we finally get a reprieve going into tomorrow evening. The rain starts to move out to the east. And again, most of the flooding concerns with this setup going to be off to the east. You see just a lot of that rainfall continuing across the Gulf Coast states like Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida. But Texas is going to see a portion of that flash flooding risk, particularly starting early tomorrow morning, Monday morning, into the afternoon and early evening on Monday. Going back up to 500 millibars, we'll start tomorrow evening on the North American model. The trough is situated here across the central and southern U.S. As it moves off to the east, Texas is going to be behind the trough. So we're going to have sinking motion behind the trough, and we're going to be clear and free of any type of robust, unsettled weather for Tuesday and Wednesday. But Wednesday is when things are going to start to change. Notice that we have another trough very similar to the one coming through tomorrow that is going to start taking shape across the western U.S. sometime late Tuesday into Wednesday. That's going to continue to dig down just like the trough for today and tomorrow will into the southern portions of the U.S. Now, as it does so, we're going to see this belt of very strong flow out ahead of this trough, and that is going to travel over the Rockies. And when that happens, we're going to see surface low development on the east or lee side of the Rockies. This is called lee cyclogenesis. This happens when you have strong westerly or southwesterly flow traversing the higher terrain of the Rockies. There's some physics involved here that we'll save for another day, but when that air goes up and over the Rockies, we see a low-level response on the east side of the higher terrain of the Rockies. As a result, a surface low develops somewhere there on the east side of the Rockies, and that is often a mechanism that fuels severe weather events on the plains. And in this case, severe weather going to be somewhat unlikely because of the overall lack of instability, but thunderstorms are a good bet as this surface low takes shape. Let's go to the surface to show you why. So keep your eyes focused here in eastern Colorado, northeast New Mexico, that kind of vicinity. This is tomorrow evening, Monday evening, going through the day on Tuesday. Again, that cold air entrenched across the region, those blues and greens. But watch what happens here tomorrow afternoon. We start to see this closed contour here, counterclockwise rotation of the winds around that. That is a surface low that's developing in southeast Colorado as that stronger flow starts to traverse the Rockies. And notice what happens with the surface winds over Texas. Let me zoom back out and we'll rewind here. So this is Monday evening. Those winds are still out of the north, as you'd expect. Very chilly day tomorrow as well. And then as we go into Tuesday, that remains the case. But as that surface low starts to develop, watch what the winds do across Texas. Look at that. Now by tomorrow afternoon and evening, that surface low there in southeast Colorado, and the surface winds are now out of the south and southeast, a much more favorable trajectory to get that warm, moist air mass across the Gulf inland across Texas for a more robust period of unsettled weather. And that's going to start taking shape on Thursday in particular. We still need a day or so to get that moisture and warm, moist air mass inland. So Wednesday is going to be on the quiet side. We're going to see some warmer air on Wednesday. But Thursday is when things start to become a little bit more interesting in the weather department as far as unsettled weather goes. So Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, that surface low is going to start moving off to the east. It's going to lose a little bit of steam as it tracks to the southeast along kind of the Red River vicinity, but we will have a cold front that will have developed with that surface low. Cold air to the north, winds out of the north there. You see those cold temperatures off to the north, those 20s and 30s up there. We may even see some snow flurries across the northern Texas panhandle late Wednesday into Thursday, given such cold air in place across the region, and just enough moisture to squeeze out a few snow flurries up there with warmer air to the south. This is Wednesday morning. That cold front's going to continue to kind of sag down to the south on Wednesday, and by this time, the trough is going to start making its way into Texas. Let me switch over to our medium range model. This is the GFS model. It is very much in line with the NAM, so let me fast forward here. So there's our first trough. Second trough starts digging down on Wednesday. Surface low develops there, and that belt of strong flow starts to creep across the region, allowing for that surface low to develop. And then we go into Thursday. We see this belt of stronger flow emanating out of Mexico there, perhaps another mechanism to provide rising motion for Thursday. And then we have that trough, that positively tilted trough moving into the southern plains as well. So a lot of mechanisms here for lift, rising motion that we need for thunderstorms and periods of heavy rainfall. And we have another day that the Weather Prediction Center has outlined as having an excessive rainfall and flash flooding risk, and that is Thursday. This is the flash flooding outlook, excessive rainfall and flash flooding outlook from the WPC, starting 6 a.m. on Thursday through 6 a.m. Friday. You can see it clips the southeast portion of Texas, basically from just east of the Houston Metroplex, eastward toward the Louisiana border. Beaumont, Jasper, maybe just south of the Jasper area. But Beaumont, Orange, Port Arthur, under the gun for some perhaps excessive rainfall and flash flooding as we go into Thursday, as we're going to have plenty of upward motion to support several rounds of thunderstorms and heavy rainfall across this region. Now, we could see some thunderstorms with this as well. The severe threat is a little bit in question, but watch what happens with the moisture here over the coming days. This is starting Tuesday evening, very dry conditions across Texas as most of that moisture, or all of that moisture, has been shunted well into the Gulf from our previous cold frontal passage. Then we go into Wednesday. That surface low starts to take shape there in eastern Colorado or southeast Colorado, and that moisture starts to get pulled northward inland. Here, this is the end of our run, but you can see we've had a lot of progress in getting those 60s and 70s dew points much closer to the coast, and we start to see some inland advance of that richer moisture. Let me switch over here to our GFS model, and I'll back it up to Wednesday evening, zoom into our southern plains sector, and show you the moisture. So the GFS perhaps even more aggressive with the moisture return here. So this is Tuesday evening, and it keeps the moisture around. Here's Wednesday afternoon. A lot of that moisture already inland, so the GFS certainly has a little bit of an interesting solution here. We don't have a ton of forcing on Wednesday for any thunderstorms or anything. We could see maybe some isolated stuff there right along the coast, given the moist air mass in place. But as we go into Thursday, that air mass, that warm, moist air mass is well inland here, up all the way into East Texas, down through kind of the San Antonio area down there and southward. And with the forcing mechanisms that we have coming in, that stronger flow aloft, the trough coming in, we could see some thunderstorms in this regime on Thursday. Now, that cold front with that surface low that develops on Tuesday out across southeast Colorado is going to be sagging to the south. So it's not going to, this warm, moist air mass not going to be able to make its way super far inland to encompass a lot of the state. But down here along, closer to the Gulf Coast, we could see some unsettled weather. Heavy rain, a good possibility, but some thunderstorms may be in the cards as well, given that we have a warm, moist air mass inland. Definitely kind of early Thursday morning through the morning and maybe early afternoon on Thursday before the cold front comes through and kind of pushes things out. So we see a little bit of instability here, not a ton of instability on this particular model run for Thursday morning, but just enough to support some thunderstorm development there, possibly. Severe weather, again, very low chances for severe weather, given that we don't really have the wind shear that we need to support it, especially low-level wind shear for tornadoes. We do have enough deep layer wind shear to organize some storms, so maybe a low-end severe weather threat on Thursday, but certainly nothing robust, and not expecting a widespread significant event by any means at all. And then things kind of push out on Thursday. We'll go back to our GFS here, and then Thursday, then the cold front kind of pushes things out back into the Gulf for Friday and into the weekend, and we should be on the quieter side going into Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We could see some lingering heavy rain concerns for southeast Texas Friday morning, but after that, things kind of clear out. It will be chilly, so we'll see the next couple of days chilly through about Tuesday. Wednesday, we see that warm up as the winds shift out of the south, bringing that warm air up from the south. And then we're going to be right back to colder air Thursday onward as that secondary cold front moves through at that time frame. So in summary, the days to watch are going to be Monday, especially along the Gulf Coast counties down there in south and southeast Texas. Heavy rain and flash flooding begins likely early tomorrow morning, going through the day on Monday. Then we clear things out Tuesday and Wednesday, going to be clear. Warm up Wednesday after a chilly stretch here through Tuesday. And then the secondary cold front comes through on Thursday. Heavy rain and flash flooding and maybe some better chances for thunderstorms exist on Thursday. Severe weather threat throughout this time frame, again, going to be very low, but we could see some rumbles of thunder across the state, particularly eastern and southeastern portions of the state tomorrow, Monday, and especially Thursday. Cold front then moves through, lingering rainfall, perhaps some flash flooding concerns for southeast Texas through Friday morning, and then for much of Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, going to be chilly but clear, and will quiet things down for the weekend. So that's going to wrap things up for this video. As always, keep it here to Texas Storm Chasers for updates. David will be bringing you updates throughout the week with what you need to know as these days of unsettled weather roll around. But that is going to do it for this video. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.